Here, I want to thank everyone overnight, all the viewers. It's just a dream come true.
Early
Truly.
morning. All right, and that's what's making news in America.
After a while, crocodile.
It's Tuesday, August 23rd. Voters decide elections, but who decides who they can vote for? We start here. A pair of primary elections shows the power and the pitfalls of gerrymandering.
One of them got away with it and the other didn't. It has real consequences for control of the House.
Some votes impact us for years. These maps will impact people for a decade. We'll get you primed. Dr. Anthony Fauci said he wouldn't leave until the pandemic was in the rearview mirror. Well, apparently he's reflected.
He had always said all along, look, I don't want to die at my desk.
What his departure means for public health. And he was accused of being violent, but should anyone be arrested like this?
You hear the woman, she gasps as she watches the man's head being slammed into the ground.
A shocking video emerges from Arkansas, and now 3 cops are off the beat. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. It's primary day in 2 of the country's biggest states, New York and Florida. These are states with big congressional delegations with tons of electoral votes in presidential elections, and crucially, they also represent 2 very different versions of politics right now. After all, New York was actually set to have its primary weeks ago until a judge said these primaries would be based on an illegal map, a map that didn't adequately represent cross-sections of voters. You've heard about gerrymandering in recent years. Often these days it's seen as a Republican issue. Well, this was a Democratic gerrymander. Now, New York is paired with Florida, which is wielding its own effect on national politics. So let's get into all this with ABC's political director, Rick Klein. Rick, first off, just what races stick out to you today on a national scale?
Well, I'll start with Ron DeSantis. He's been one of the most prominent Republican governors in the country. A lot of people think he's gearing up for 2024. First, he's got to get through 2022.
The state of Florida is the place where woke goes to die. We are not going to let this state... We're not going to let this state descend into some type of woke dumpster fire.
The question is who Democrats put up against him. Do they go with Nikki Fried, the state agricultural commissioner, a rare Democrat who's won statewide office?
And I'm sorry to the people of our state that Ron DeSantis has decided to declare culture wars as the #1 priority. That is not what we are going to be doing.
Unfortunately for Nikki, she's losing this campaign.
Or do you go with Charlie Crist, who actually was a governor once before, only as a Republican, way back in the olden days of the Obama administration?
I'm the only candidate in this race as your governor before, even as a Republican, vetoed an anti-abortion bill. And I'll do it again.
So there's a big question about how Democrats square up against him. And then the main event in New York is the primary in Manhattan that puts Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney against each other.
I didn't want to run against my good friend Jerry Nadler. We have been friends and allies for years.
This is wild. These are people that have been on the same side of just about every issue for the last 30 years in Congress. They're both committee chairs, very powerful in the Democratic majority.
That's why I led both impeachments against Donald Trump, because you could see the attack on democracy that he was launching.
But because of redistricting and because of the way the judge ordered the new districts to be drawn, they were lumped in together. And you've got the 2 of these old allies that have to run against each other. Plus, they have a younger progressive challenger nipping at their heels.
Wait, can we talk then about why this map looks the way it looks and why these states are even on the same day? It wasn't supposed to be this way, Rick.
No, look, what redistricting giveth, it taketh away. And what happened here is that Democrats basically got greedy.
I signed the maps that were presented to me, written and created by the legislatures in Washington as well as here. So
they tried to do as much as they could in a very aggressive gerrymander in New York to try to elect as many Democrats as possible. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis in Florida did the opposite.
I officially vetoed the congressional redistricting map.
He tried to get as many Republicans elected as possible.
He said their versions contained racial gerrymanders and were unconstitutional. Now, analysts say the new lines the governor has drawn cut the state's minority districts from 4 to 2 and could allow Republicans to pick up 4 more seats.
Now, DeSantis squeaked his by the courts, and the courts have allowed this map to stay in effect, at least through this election cycle. The New York lawmakers had no such luck.
Powerful House Leader Hakeem Jeffries has been effectively drawn out of his own district.
Yes,
we have a problem with these maps. It would make Jim Crow blush.
They are stuck now having to deal with a court-ordered redrawing of the districts that took away a lot of the advantages they thought they were going to get, and in fact imperils some of their incumbents. Even the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee.
I'm Sean Patrick Maloney. I'm the first openly gay person ever elected to Congress from New York.
He's running against someone else, including a progressive. It has created a domino effect where Democrats are basically forced to eat their own in one of the bluest states in the country.
But wait, is that because the Democratic gerrymander was so much worse than the Republican gerrymander? Or is it because, like, New York judges who are appointed by New York politicians might think differently than a Florida judge who's been appointed by a Florida politician? If those decisions are different, doesn't it have a profound effect on, like, a national democracy?
Yeah, I mean, gerrymanders are always in the eye of the beholder, Brad. And look, the Supreme Court has made clear they're going to let states litigate this for the most part. That's been one mantra of the current conservative majority on the court. So without passing judgment on who gerrymandered worse, Florida tried to gerrymander in a Republican direction. New York tried to do it in a Democratic direction. One of them got away with it and the other didn't. And it has real consequences for control of the House and also minority representation. In Florida, a majority black district in the northern part of the state has essentially been blown up under this map, and there are lawsuits that are out there, but this is still going to be the map that's in place for at least this election cycle. And more broadly, look, the technology has gotten to the place that you can basically draw any map you want. States are trying things, sometimes with the court's approval, sometimes around the courts, that have never really been tried before. And we are going to have a more polarized Congress than ever, fewer battleground districts and more deeply red and deeply blue districts in the next Congress. No question about that.
It's fascinating. All right, Rick Klein, we'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Brad.
Next up on Start Here, the doctor is out. But don't worry, we'll be right back.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir. America's #1 most watched newscast. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live. America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7. Straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi! Is this mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasured that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby. It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Elizabeth Holmes found guilty on 4 counts of fraud, facing the possibility of decades in prison. Now, we take you inside the courtroom and behind the scenes. The Dropout, Elizabeth Holmes on Trial. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news, free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever you want it, wherever you are, anytime. ABC News Live, streaming live and free on all platforms.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
My wife had fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
In Los Angeles, there's this clothing store called Kitson. A lot of celebrities have been seen shopping there over the years. But this week, the thing people are photographing is this sign in the window. A sign telling customers they're not allowed to wear masks inside.
The owner of Kitson says they've noticed an uptick in people wearing masks to avoid identification while stealing things. Kitson says people who want to wear masks are welcome to set up an appointment or shop online on their website.
But this speaks to what a strange moment in the pandemic we're in right now. Like a year ago, there would be no question among Angelenos whether COVID or shoplifting posed the bigger risk. COVID, clearly. Well, now, for Kitson at least, the answer is apparently not so clear. And in this kind of muddled moment, the person who became famous for giving Americans clarity, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the chief medical advisor to the White House, has decided to step down. Let's go to ABC's Ann Flaherty, who covers federal agencies. And Ann, Dr. Fauci made news on this podcast several months ago when he kind of toyed with the idea of retirement. You were the one who suggested I ask him about that, right? So you must have seen this coming.
You know, that's right. I think as soon as Dr. Jha showed up at the White House, and, you know, he was known for being this effective communicator, to me, that sort of signaled that Dr. Fauci was on his way out. And he had always said all along, you know, look, I don't want to die at my desk.
This is the thing that I do. This is what I've been trained and experienced in doing my entire professional life. There's no way I'm going to walk away from this until we get this under control.
But, you know, he loves his job. He so clearly loves his job. And we know this because, you know, if you want to know one thing about Dr. Fauci, it's that pretty much anyone could email him or call him. And there was a high chance he would respond. He talked to medical students, people still in school, considering going into public health. He would respond back to them.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, thanks for your time.
Good to be with you. Let's do it.
Remember in the beginning of the pandemic, when Matthew McConaughey called him up and said,
let's just clear it up. How the virus is transmitted, and can you get it from surfaces or only via air?
It's transmitted predominantly by the respiratory route, droplets or aerosolized from one person to another.
But I think, especially as the midterms were coming up, you know, I think he became such a lightning rod for the right. To me, it made a lot of sense that he would bow out before then, because conservatives were using him too easily to say, this is the face of lockdowns. This is what Democrats want to do. They want to put a mask on your child and they want to lock down your school. And I think Democrats knew that's, you know, a losing argument. Even they don't agree with that. So, you know, Fauci to step aside now and to hand the reins over to someone like Dr. Jha, I think that's actually probably a smart political move. And then, you know, we know he's not going to go anywhere. We know he's going to be still around. He's going to be still weighing in on studies and helping to communicate, because that really was his sort of gift.
If you get infected, even if you don't get severe disease, you are a vehicle of transmission to another person. So you essentially are helping to propagate the outbreak.
He didn't care about how smart he sounded. He cared about whether or not people understood him. And that is really, really rare when you interview scientists and people in public health. He really cared that the public understood it and that they took away what they needed to stay safe.
And he's still technically part of the National Institute of Health, and his departure from there will take several months. He says he might also write a book, so plenty of Fauci still to come. But you mentioned that even Democrats in blue cities and states are saying, masking thing, not so much right now. And yet we're still in a world, Anne, where we're seeing at least 100,000, probably many hundreds of thousands of cases per day. What is the state of the pandemic that Fauci leaves behind now?
You know, I think it's tricky. He always said he wouldn't leave unless the pandemic was in the rearview mirror. And then he sort of changed that towards the end where he said, okay, well, I don't think we're ever going to be completely rid of this. You know, we have about a third of the country is still in these high community levels that the CDC terms. And remember, the CDC changed their rules on this. It's not that you have high cases out of control. It means that you have enough high cases and you have hospital beds that might be dwindling in number. So you're sort of on alert for your medical health system. So that's what that high transmission level is. Only about a third of the country is there right now. It's in states like Florida, Georgia, West Virginia, northern Montana is in this level. You know, the rest of the country really is either in a medium or low state, which means that they're essentially dealing with it. most of us, we've had COVID over in the past year because many people are vaccinated. Many of us survived it. So what we're looking at now is sort of turning into this maintenance mode of like booster shots every year, possibly a little bit sooner. I think a game changer for this fall is the government is preparing to roll out this Omicron-specific vaccine that we think that every adult is going to qualify for in September. And that's the hope, is that that's going to get us through that potential wave that we've always seen happen with COVID over the winter.
Our tools and our vaccines, if you are up to date, if you get vaccinated recently, if you get in an infection, if you get treatments, those continue to work really, really well.
But I think Fauci leaves now. We know so much more about the pandemic than when we first did. I mean, it just is so dramatically different than when, 2.5 years ago.
Well, and you mentioned the Omicron-specific vaccine coming out. That'll probably be in like mid to late September, we think, we hope. The nation's biggest school district, New York City, they're about to come to class after Labor Day. New York City now says, based on CDC guidance, its rules are changing. I mean, can you kind of walk us forward into like what this, if you said this is sort of about maintenance and even these blue cities, what does that look like in a 2022 school year?
Well, I think every blue city, and President Biden has made very clear, schools need to stay open. They know that it's just a losing idea to go out there and say that these schools need to even be, considering shutting down. And I do think, to be fair, that that's also based in science.
We now have 2 years of experience to know that children are safe in classrooms, and when they're not in a classroom and the learning stops, the traditional learning stops, it can be devastating.
So the biggest thing that parents and kids need to know about these new rules that the CDC put out is that there is no more quarantine. So if you are exposed, whether you are up to date with your shots or you're not, it doesn't matter. You don't have to stay at home.
Like kid gets COVID next to you, that doesn't mean you're staying home for the next week.
Right, exactly. So test to stay gone.
The days of sending an entire classroom home because one person was symptomatic or test positive, those days are over.
You do have to isolate if you get sick. I think that that's an important point to make. Right. If you still get the virus, you still have to stay home for 5 days. But even then, that 5 days is shorter than it was last year. I mean, this school year is so remarkably different because we're starting the school year out with everyone now qualifies for a vaccine. That is a huge difference than it was this time last year.
All right. Ann Flaherty covering federal agencies. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brad.
The call came in on a Sunday morning. An Arkansas convenience store worker saying a man had spit on him and was physically threatening him. By that afternoon, a suspect was in custody. But video of this arrest showed police allegedly being so aggressive, so violent, that yesterday, all 3 of those arresting officers were suspended. ABC's Marcus Moore has been reporting this out as the outrage has grown. And Marcus, can you just walk me through what happened here?
Yeah, well, first off, from the moment this video was posted online, it spread so quickly, as these videos do. This one's seen all over the country and all over the world, really. And it's a graphic and very visceral and a difficult thing to watch. You see the video that's clearly being recorded from inside of a vehicle by a bystander. You can hear music in the background, and you see in the frame these 3 officers on top of a man, and they are punching him, kneeing him, kicking him. And at one point, you hear the woman, she gasps as she watches the man's head being slammed into the ground. According to witnesses, the officers pointed a gun at him. It was just a violent arrest that happened on Sunday morning that, as you mentioned, it started with a report of this man who's now been identified as 27-year-old Randall Worcester of South Carolina. He was accused of threatening and spitting on that store clerk. And once police found him, he was at a different location, but they found him a short time later. And that's when this incident unfolded. And according to authorities who are investigating this, the county sheriff there said that at one point, Worcester either attacked the officers or was physical towards them. And that preceded the violent arrest that we saw in the video. And as you know, this is truly has been shocking to a lot of people. Even the governor has come out and said that it is reprehensible what he saw in the video.
What that response was not consistent with the training that they receive as certified officers with the Arkansas Law Enforcement Training Academy.
He has pledged to conduct a full and thorough investigation into what happened.
Yeah, what does happen to these officers?
Right now, each of them are on paid administrative leave, pending the outcome of the investigation that's going on, that's being conducted by the Arkansas State Police. But also, Brad, keep in mind the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as the Department of Justice. They are now investigating to see if Worcester's civil rights were violated.
The dash cam does bring to light other things that did happen there, that initiated, that wasn't caught on the citizens' camera.
As we've heard from the sheriff, something led up to this. It doesn't justify what happened, obviously, but something happened, and it hasn't been seen yet publicly what led up to that violent arrest. But we are now aware of dash cam video that, according to authorities, shows the moments that led up to the violent arrest, i.e., presumably the moment when the suspect, Mr. Worcester, allegedly assaulted the officers. And Brad, just some of the charges that he's facing right now, battery, assault, resisting arrest, and also making a terroristic threat.
All right, we'll see if there's any charges against these officers. Marcus Moore, tracking all this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad.
All right, one more quick break. When we come back, here's hoping the sequel will be better than the original. One Last Thing is next.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends.
Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Take America's #1 news with you anywhere you go, anytime, free. Download the ABC News app now. Breaking news, exclusives, 24/7. There for you with one touch. The ABC News app. Download it now. This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis. Streaming weeknights.
America is being poisoned with fentanyl, and we don't even know it.
Just heard my wife screaming. She told me they had just died.
50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
Keep breathing, come on. It's poison, it's pure poison.
A few grains of salt worth of fentanyl will kill you.
Just my agency has seized enough to kill the entire country.
ABC News Live presents Poisoned, America's Fentanyl Crisis. The powerful series, streaming free on ABC News Live.
So what's good to read this summer? Well, Kate and I have decided to jump in and help you.
And we're talking with Oprah, John Irving, and so many popular authors and influencers.
So we want you to join us. Myself, Charlie Gibson, and my daughter, Kate Gibson.
Oh, hey, that's me.
That is you. For the new podcast series, it is called The Bookcase with Kate and Charlie.
We will make sure you love what you read.
Listen anywhere and anytime. The Bookcase Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
And one last thing, there's always a chance a business will go down in flames, but few have ever done so as spectacularly as MoviePass.
Those ticket prices are steadily rising, and many people are turning to MoviePass.
Remember, this was a service a few years ago that promised for $10 a month you could walk into your local movie theater and watch as many films as you wanted, until, it didn't work.
So rather than being able to profit and make money off of the members that didn't use their pass regularly, they instead ended up losing money on virtually every single subscriber.
I was in the theater every day knowing for a fact there was no way they could be making money off of this.
Well, smash cut to yesterday, and the company's co-founder, Stacy Spikes, says MoviePass will indeed have a second act. And I know what you're thinking. This was obviously a huge money loser the first time around. How could it possibly become profitable? Well, first of all, there will be a new pricing model. Instead of $10 a month for unlimited movies, users will pay between $10 and $30 a month. Where you live also matters here, and that will give you a certain number of credits to spend on tickets.
You're going to have peak and off-peak times that you're going to be able to use the credits differently.
How many tickets will those credits get you? The company won't say, nor will they commit to allowing customers to see movies on their opening weekends.
When you have your total number of credits, you're going to be able to say, well, you know what? I want to use fewer credits on that, but you might say it's Friday or Saturday night, I want to use more.
The other big difference between now and back then is, frankly, movie theaters are a lot more desperate. Originally, the finance firms that owned MoviePass found themselves shelling out for so many tickets that eventually they went under. Well, just yesterday, you had Cineworld, which owns Regal Cinemas, saying it's considering bankruptcy now. To avoid going too viral too fast, this iteration will limit its initial membership. Oh, and there's one other big change. The original MoviePass card was red, practically predicted a red accounting sheet. The new card, you guessed it, will be optimistically black. Only they had thought of a black card the first time, right? Like, none of this would have happened. Hey, this show remains free every day, so if you're enjoying it, hit us up with a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen. More on all these stories, along with live coverage of these primaries later tonight at abcnews.com and the ABC News app. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever